All right, I'm back. Hello everybody, good afternoon, happy Friday. Gonna take just a moment to see if people join us. I hope I'm posting on the right account. Make it a little bit hard to do sometimes. All these changes to the Facebook since I was on here last, it's been a while. Let me reintroduce myself to you all. My name is Ryan. I'm an interpreter with California State Parks, and I'm talking to you from the beautiful Humboldt Redwoods State Park here in Northern California. Just get a look at this place for a moment. Welcome in, everybody. I'm just waiting for some people to jump in. All right, got some more folks here. In fact, it's good right there. We'll keep it right there. It's been a while. It's been a long while. It's probably been like 5 months since I've done a Facebook Live, so it's nice to be back, and nice to be back in one of my favorite places, Humboldt Redwood State Park. I'm standing in Founders Grove. Now, this place means a lot to me, and it means a lot to me because when I was a little kid, I used to go here a lot. I grew up in the Bay Area near Santa Rosa, and my grandparents lived in Rio Dell, and so Rio Dell is in Humboldt County, and to get there, you got to drive through the Avenue of the Giants through Humboldt Redwood State Park. So I would go through here all the time. How's it going? Hello, bud. Hey, Steve. So this place meant a lot to me, and by the time I was maybe 5 or 6, we would go out to this forest and go hiking around. It's a pretty small little trail, so it's not a whole lot of effort for a little kid. But one time we went out here, and my parents wanted to take me to the Dyerville Giant. And the Dyerville Giant was known to be, at the time, at least in the early 90s, or in the late 80s, it was the tallest known redwood in Humboldt Redwood State Park. It was about 362 feet tall. It was about 1,600 years old. So about 1992, I was hiking through here with my family to see the Dyerville Giant, this giant tree, and to my shock and to my surprise, that tree was on its side. The Dyerville Giant had come crashing to the earth. It was the previous winter, 1991, when in 1 month there was 17 inches of rain. That's a lot of rain for 1 month. There's places in California that don't get that much rain in a year. And here in Humboldt, we got 17 inches of rain in 1 month. And over that time period, this tree fell. Now, the process of it falling actually took about a week or so. One tree kind of loosened. The rain makes those roots in the ground really tender. Basically, the ground gets really soft. The roots give way. That tree buckles over. That tree hit the Dyerville Giant, kind of weakened it, and a week later, that tree fell to the earth. This tree fell to the earth. The Dyerville Giant, when it hit the ground, it made a sound that could be heard half a mile away. And that one witness that heard it said it sounded like a train wreck happening. So let's move a little bit farther here. Take a look at this tree now. What has happened since then? Let's see if I can turn my lens around here. Oh, I can. Good. We'll do it like that. Much better. What has happened in 30 years? Geez, I can't believe it's been almost 30 years. Let's take a look. What do you notice? Any curious, inquiring minds taking a look at this tree? I'll tell you what I notice. There's a lot of stuff growing on it. Up here, looks like I can see some poison oak, native to California, to these parts. Some new growth. We've got ferns up here. We've got a lot of dead leaves called duff, creating a soil layer up there. New critters' homes, exactly, yeah, so this is habitat. Up here you're going to find invertebrates, you're going to find salamanders, and you might find small mammals browsing up there. I'm going to flip my camera around again, just so you can see me compared to this tree. Pretty wild. It's almost hard to believe how massive this is. Steve says, Epiphytes alive. Yeah, so we call those epiphytes when there's living things growing on top of a platform like this. So it looks kind of like the bottom is melting into the ground too. Yeah, a little bit. You know, after 30 years, I'd say it's doing pretty good. It's still intact pretty well. So let's flash forward. Let's flash forward 100 years, 200 years. This log will probably still be here. It could take a millennia for the redwood, the Dyersville giant, to break down. Remember how old I said this tree was before it fell? 1,600 years. In 1,600 years, this tree accumulated, it took in about 250 tons of carbon out of the atmosphere, carbon dioxide. So redwood trees are climate defenders. They, like this one, are able to drink that carbon out of the air. A single redwood tree might consume a pound of carbon in a day. Now, some of you might remember photosynthesis from when you were a kid, maybe in 4th grade, that really confusing concept of where a plant takes the energy from the sun and carbon from the atmosphere, and then they take some water, and then the process combines in the chloroplast. I hope I'm not losing you. And that produces energy, glucose, for the tree. So in that process, carbon dioxide is taken out of the atmosphere. So redwood trees are climate defenders because carbon dioxide is a heat-trapping gas. So the more carbon there is in the atmosphere, the warmer, the more sun's energy gets trapped. So this is important now because climate has been on the conversation a lot lately. Here in California, we've been experiencing a lot of fire. I just had some rain the other day and it cleared out all the smoke, but there was like a week, in some places 2 weeks, where it wasn't safe to walk out of your door. I had to stay inside. My car was covered in ash. It smelled like you were walking around a campfire that had just been put out, but you could not escape it. So our governor, Gavin Newsom, attributed this to climate change. And some people asked me, well, is that really climate change? Isn't it mismanagement of the forest? Isn't it that we've suppressed wildfires for so long? And that is part of it. But climate change is a big part of it as well that we can't deny. If you want to learn more about fire management, there's a great video, great Facebook Live that Griff, one of my fellow interpreters, did here at Humboldt Redwood State Park just a couple weeks ago. There's also some great Facebook Lives that are done by our good friend Skip, who is also an interpreter up at Sumeg Village at Patrick's Point. He talks a lot about indigenous relationships with fire. He's Yurok, and there's a long tradition of Yurok having a relationship with fire and using that as a management tool here in this region. So fires are definitely a result, or bigger fires are a result of mismanagement, but some things are bigger than that. We had our worst fire year on record, 1.6 million acres of forest burned this year. But this is also in association with some of the hottest temperatures ever recorded here in California this year. Some of the driest years ever recorded. Some of the record hottest temperatures on the planet have happened in the last 20 years. This has an impact. There are forests in California, fortunately not our redwoods, that might not have a drop of water for 8 months. And that's because California, we live in a place where we have a wet season and a dry season. Now, where do redwoods factor into this? Remember, they take that carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And that can make a big difference. Now, it's going to take a lot more than just these redwoods being able to do that. So, in the planet, every year, there's about 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide released through industrial and the global economy activities. So energy that we produce through industrialization and the global economy. And again, one redwood tree can consume in its lifetime 250 tons of carbon. So that's about half the weight of a jumbo jet being taken out of the atmosphere by one tree. The redwood forests once covered 2.2 million acres of land. We're talking millions, maybe billions of trees. Now today there are only about 4.5% of that original forest left. because of past logging practices and timber harvesting and building railroads and building San Francisco after the earthquake and all kinds of other uses. But the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, the IPCC, has recommended that planting 1 billion trees on our planet, that's about the land area of the United States, that might have an impact on curbing climate change. Just one part of it. So this is a hopeful story, because when you hear people talk about planting trees, then suddenly we're like, well, that's something that I can do. Meanwhile, waiting for policies to adapt to the current science, and it could take a long time because people are always arguing about this thing that really we can't argue about, which is climate change, which is a really simple fact of the world getting warmer. But people obviously have different policy views on how we protect our climate. So in the meantime, there are things we can do, whether it's planting trees. For example, if it's 1 billion trees that we need to plant on this planet, think about organizations in your area that might be able to help. Think about maybe there are nonprofits, things you can donate to, causes you can donate to that plant trees. Or think about your own home. Do you own some property? Do you live with some family that have property? You could be a solution and part of this in planting trees. Should you plant redwoods? Well, do you live in an area where redwoods grow? If you don't, I would say don't plant redwoods where they don't naturally grow, because you're going to have to take care of them, and they're going to be a real chore, and you might have to use a lot of water. Plant native plants. Plant things that are native to where you grow, because they're adapted to live in that climate where you're at. There's something that state parks is doing in association with national parks and with Save the Redwoods League that's really cool too. It's kind of like a big expansion of this idea of planting and helping forests. And that's called Redwoods Rising. So up at Redwood National State Parks, there's about 70,000 acres of forest that was logged before it could be protected. And so that means that there's 70,000 acres of crowded trees that were all replanted by aerial seeding, and they're all just grown and they're crowding each other out. They're not getting very big. They're not like these old growth redwood forests that we see here, which have had lots of room to grow. Fires that have been caused by indigenous people for millennia have thinned these forests out. Natural processes like wind and flooding has done the same. So these other forests, that 70,000 acres that I talked about, is a much more crowded, dense, what we call dog hair stand of forests. Not going to absorb a lot of carbon out of the atmosphere. But what's happening now is a process of landscape management. They're actually thinning some of that forest, reducing the amount of trees there so that each tree has more room to grow. More room. Imagine if you were hanging out with a bunch of people in a room. Could you imagine doing that in Corona times? It's been a long time since I remember being crowded in a room with people. And but you know, if you don't have a lot of room because there's everyone there, you can't go anyplace. The same thing is true with trees. If they're too packed together, they got no room to get wider. They're going to be shading each other out. It's a bad deal. And oh, and great. Thank you, Robin. You just shared a link or a website that can help with native plants and help you understand native plants. Highly recommend you check that out. So what Redwoods Rising is doing, trying to accelerate the next generation of old growth redwoods by giving those crowded trees a little bit more room to grow. Imagine 70,000 acres. That could be several million trees. Each of those trees able to take 250 tons of carbon out of the atmosphere in their lifetime. Again, half the weight of a loaded 747 jet. That's pretty impressive. So we have things that we can do to help to solve the issues of climate change. There are a lot of other things that need to be done. Definitely new policies in place. We're going to have to be really adventurous and really brave in some of the things that we do. But as times like this last year and this last summer have shown us, and in some areas are still showing us, is that the issue of climate change is right at our doorstep now. It's in our lungs from all that smoke that we breathed in. And some of that can be attributed, and a lot of that can be attributed to management and mismanagement. But you cannot deny the drier years, the hotter temperatures, the kindling-like conditions that our forests have experienced, the less snowpack, the decreased snowpack and receding glaciers in our Rocky Mountains and our Sierra Nevada mountains and our Cascades, that have meant there's less water in our streams, less water keeping our ecosystems cool. All of that is a result of something that we have the ability to confront and challenge and overcome. And one of those is by recognizing that redwood trees themselves are climate defenders. So I hope what you take away from this is that there is some hope and there are things that we can do. I recommend, if you want to get more information on the issues of climate change, you can check out the ipcc.ch. If you want to learn more about Redwoods Rising, that big initiative happening, that big project happening up in Northern California, go to savetheredwoods.org. They've got lots of information on that. It's really awesome. You can check out, let's see, what did Robin share with us? That link there. You can check out nfw.org to learn more about native plants in your area. If you want to learn more about native plants and just discover what plants are in your area, you could also use iNaturalist, the iNaturalist app, which we all used a couple weeks ago when we did our BioBlitz event. So I just want to real quick see if there's any comments or questions that anyone had. I want to thank you so much for joining. Someone mentioned 130 plus in Death Valley last month. That is wild. There's some record temperatures happening out there. I will be happy to tell you that today it's probably about 70 degrees here. So I'm just going to kind of bow out of here with just one last look at the Dyerville Giant. 30 years ago, I came to this forest, came to Founders Grove with my family to discover this fallen giant here. And I've been coming back every year. In fact, I come back here so often because I work in this area. And this tree will continue, this log will continue to be here 30 years from now, long after I'm gone, long after the generation after me are gone, long after those. It may be here for 1,000 years. And while it's doing that, while it's laying there, it's going to be holding on to that carbon, slowly releasing it and providing habitat for wildlife. And just showing how these trees are such good climate defenders. So thank you everyone for joining me. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay tuned tomorrow for a Facebook Live again at 3 o'clock, and then the following day a Facebook Live at 3 o'clock, and on we go. Hope you have a great weekend. Bye.